And so Thursday morning basketball arrives. It's 5:15 a.m. I get in my car and I start her up, as they call it. And it is cold and my window panes are frosted over. Well, I have a 2015 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid. If you know anything about the 2015 Hyundai Sonata Hybrid, you know that the defrost mechanism is not the best in the world. It takes a little time, especially when you compare it to the things of 2020 and beyond. You know, I have had the privilege to ride in some 2020 and after cars, and I watched them press the defrost, and it is absolutely sensational. You know, I was in Denver in 2025 and 2024, and that is where I journeyed and drove in a 2020 and beyond. I believe it is 2025 at the time vehicle. And it was a van, and we mentioned it on this podcast, is that it smelled like marijuana. And it didn't just smell like marijuana, there was marijuana inside of it when we purchased it. And all of which to say, Denver gets cold, and so I pressed the defrost button, and it was so fast. The ice just melted away on the outside. We could go in a minute's notice. That was not the case on Thursday. You know, I was late because I had to wait for my vehicle to defrost. And that's perfectly fine. And it's allowed me to take some time to reflect. And as I was thinking about who would be at basketball. And this one guy sticks out. He goes by Mando. Or Mando Bando 51 or the Big Red Machine. He goes by any of those. And I got there 5:32 a.m. Mando walks in and he says, and this is two or 3 weeks ago, whenever I first released, Rodrigo finally let me release a podcast by myself. And he walks in, he's like, I'm so glad that podcast was back. I saw that notification and I was listening on my drive here. And it made me think of loyal people to the podcast, Rodrigo being maybe one of them. But Mando, Bando, the Big Red Machine, he always, I don't know if he hates it and he's just being kind, but he's always hyping it up. He loves listening, and I celebrate that. I'm thankful for him, not just his friendship, but his loyalty. And if you know anything about the trend of the past few months, you know that there are some people in our lives that aren't loyal. And I think that fleshes itself out in many forms. Two forms is myself and Brett. And so for a few months, we were not loyal to you. Now, I returned to loyalty a few weeks ago, but again, it's been hard to get Brett back on. He is, how would you say, occupied. However, ladies and gentlemen of the Quite Frankly podcast, I'm pretty stoked, and I'm going to share with you some important information here. And if you're a faithful watcher and not just a listener, you would have figured this out now. But I think we have a special guest on the show. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Brett Walters, formerly a co-host of the Quite Frankly podcast, and as of recent, I am a co-host of the Quite Frankly podcast. It's great to be back, I'll say that. Also, the people listening, they were probably like, oh, another Bo, exclusive Bo episode. So we really let them hang on there for 3 or 4 minutes. So if they made it this far, they deserve to have the both of us. You know what I mean?
Yes.
If they click on, they say, oh, it's just the one. It's just Bo. You know, it could be either of us. I'm not, knocking you or anything like that. But, if they hear it's just the...
If it's helpful, if it is helpful, whenever you say, oh, it's just another Bo, I feel the same way whenever I'm recording those solo. I feel, my goodness, am I a narcissist? Am I indulging? I don't know if that's the right term, but I don't feel good doing it. But I know that consistency breeds What does it breed, if you don't mind helping me?
It breeds timeliness, I think, punctuality,
Timeliness is good. Punctuality?
excellence,
Perhaps. It starts with an L.
leadership.
I was going loyalty, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm glad you're here.
Well, like I said, I love to be back. I feel like whenever I was listening to the Bo exclusive episodes, every time they would drop, I would have this sense of not guilt, but almost, I'm like, Bo's out here, he's grinding, he's putting it in, and what am I doing? I mean, I'm driving to work, it's 6 a.m, and quite frankly pops up. And it's, you feel awful. You're like, goodness gracious, I'm leaving this man out all in the cold when I could be giving him a hug, warming him up, But yeah, it's good to be back. And if you listen to those exclusive, Bo exclusive, we'll call them BE episodes, you really kind of shout me out there the last couple weeks. And so I expressed some interest a few, 2-3 weeks back. Hey, man, I want to get back. Obviously there was a price to pay, kind of like going from live to, back to PGA, going back to an old girlfriend, if you will. There's a price to pay. So, unfortunately, you and Rodrigo got together and said, look, we're going to have to strip you of your shares and your equity for the next few years. But I'm okay with that. That's just like you were talking about with loyalty. I've got to earn it back, right? You got to earn trust. We're on a leash system here, if you will. You get a long leash, you do something bad, like, disappear for 14, 16 months. You come back, that leash is going to be awful short. You know what I mean? And that's really what I want our listeners, driving or whatever you're doing right now. I want the image in your head of me on a leash and Bo holding it. That's what I'm trying to get to here.
And for a long time, you've been a bad boy. And maybe that leash turned into a shock collar. But I think you have expressed enough interest and you've expressed desire and willingness to act. And that's why Rodrigo decided to have you back. So I don't know if I'd subscribe to as much as Bo and Rodrigo put all the shares. I mean, I kind of like the long leash. Rodrigo has been loyal, so I kind of keep that with him. And then our investors are really the sayers in the company. And so we just want to do what is right in their eyes. And I think that makes us the bad guys sometime. And wouldn't want Rodrigo to listen to this and think we're dogging on him, but I'd say part of it's his fault to a certain extent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. A lot of people, whenever I did leave, they were saying, oh, he had his second child, a beautiful baby girl. He's got his hands full, all these other things. But I don't think it's ever been put on the record. But truthfully, it was a falling out between me and Rodrigo. I just really didn't agree with some of his means and methods. I think we, just didn't see eye to eye on a morality standpoint on several things that he was doing, several things that I was doing. But luckily, that's water under the bridge, as they say. Yeah, I'm so grateful and happy to be back in the fold.
Yeah. Speaking of bridges, I think it'd be helpful to kind of build that bridge back to our listeners. And if you shared kind of what's been going on in your life over the past 5 or 6 months, or 14 to 16 months, however you prefer.
Well, like I said, I did have, I didn't give birth, but my lovely wife gave birth to our second child. And so really the fallout with Rodrigo was great timing because I could spend more time with the kids, with my wife and the family, just supporting her any way I can. But yeah, there's been a lot that's happened. I mean, I went to Houston back in October for a work trip, a little conference. That was a blast. Christmas, me and you got together in here in Lakewood Ranch. Obviously, you weren't feeling your best. You were probably the worst I've ever seen you. Honestly, that was horrendous. I mean, Christmas morning. Can you imagine? Christmas morning, you're curled up in bed. You come down, you say, "Look what Santa brought me. I don't even care." And you went right back upstairs and you slept all day until you had to wake up for your flight that afternoon. You know how miserable it is for us?
It was horrendous.
No. I'm not talking about you.
Oh, sorry.
We need to pivot from your self-centered ideology here. You know how depressing it is for us? You look around the room, you've got the whole family there. You know, you've got everyone. And then Bo, where is he? Oh, he's asleep upstairs and it's Christmas Day and he doesn't even care. You know what I mean? It's pitiful. It's pitiful. But yeah, I went to Texas after that. And I went to Utah. I got to snowboard for the first time in like 8 or 9 years. One thing, and I'll try to make this short, but one thing that I always love about snowboarding is when you get up on the mountain, it's almost like the outside world doesn't exist. I mean, it depends on what you do with your phone, right? If you have your phone on, you're checking it a lot, then obviously it's easy to be connected. But I'm wearing gloves. I'm not trying to take those things off to check my phone. So I go up there, I lose contact with the outside world, you know? You get on the lifts. Me and my dad and my brother, we always try to have some fun with the random people we get on the lifts with. So every time we make up some sort of story, it's almost like a cold open for the Quite Frankly podcast, except it's, 50% fictional, 50% truthful. But it's just so ridiculous that we try to get people to laugh and we see who's a real person and who's an NPC. You know what I'm saying?
Which I learned what that stood for in a podcast I was listening to this week.
Oh, really?
Stands for non-playable character, I believe.
Right, yeah. So if you ever play a video game and you see a random person walking around and they like bump into the wall a couple times and then like pivot on a 90 degrees and like walk the other direction, that's a NPC in a game. But obviously there's a lot of people out there living in the real world that are very similar to that, unfortunately.
So you went to Utah, you snowboarded, and you ran into some NPCs.
Yeah. I think the best part was we would always try to get them to see what kind of animal's blood did they, what kind of animal's blood transfusion would you want to get? Because a lot of people say that if you transfuse, grizzly bear blood into your own, you're obviously going to become more aggressive, more protective, perhaps, than if you got a transfusion with a seal. Seals are still pretty aggressive, but, you're probably going to be laying around in the nude, eating a lot of food, just kind of your blubber hanging out. But yeah, I think Trevor settled on, I can't remember what it was. My dad was honey badger. I think I said bull shark. Trevor said something that was pretty aggressive, but I can't remember what it was. If I remember, I'll have to tell you.
Yeah, I love it. That reminds me. So last night, which we're filming this on a Saturday, so on Friday, I went to the UF Gymnastics meet. Well, UF Gymnastics is pretty fantastic. And so they absolutely smoked the Arkansas Razorbacks. They woo-pigged their suey, if you would. And a question was presented to me by my friend Thomas, and he said, if you were doing a floor routine what songs are you choosing? And so I'm going to say mine, but I'd love to know yours. And I didn't really say a song. Usually they do a switch up in the middle. Some of them do 3 switch ups. But I'm going Inspector Gadget-like music, so a little robot type. And then the switch up is gotta be a mariachi band.
Oh.
I think that would present an absolutely electric performance on the floor. I think I'd have to work on my tumbles and flips, but I can do my most gym-like ability is a toe touch, and my knees are still bent. So I'm not quite there in my skill level, but I have vision. And I think that's a lot of how you have to begin.
That's true. That's so tough, man, on the spot. I would have to say I really love the mashups that some DJs do with like 2 different songs that are totally different. Like there's one that mixes like In the Club by 50 Cent with Tight Fitting Jeans. That's an absolute classic. I would probably have to say that one. And if you've never heard that, just go to YouTube. They've got it on YouTube, and they've got a picture of Conway Twitty and 50 Cent, and they've kind of merged their faces together using AI. It's a little spooky, but pretty funny at the same time. So I would have to go. I'd probably have to go with that one.
Yeah, that's good. Well, speaking of sports, in the past few months, there's been a lot of change in the world, and change with teams and companies that we root for. And I think one of those teams is the Florida Gators. So there's the John Sumrall hire and all that recruiting. I'm curious what your thoughts are. Do you have any thoughts, insider football knowledge for our listeners? I know you're a big fan. You love the Gators. You love the swamp. You love the atmosphere, and you want to see them succeed back in the glory days like they did in 2008.
Yeah, no, I certainly do. I don't know, man. My initial thought was just I was downtrodden because we didn't get Lane, right? I think that was the majority of the fan base. And I'm thinking, we're really going to go hire another group of 4 guy, another Sun Belt guy. I say, goodness gracious. I mean, I know he's coaching in the American, but he coached in the Sun Belt as well. And it's a little tough after what we just went through. But I think Strickland, for all of his flaws, I think he did what he had to do as far as damage control with the media. Got Spurrier, brought back Urban, got Danny Warfel involved with the search as well. So it's almost like he made the hire, but at the same time, he's saying, hey, look, all these Gator greats were also involved in the process. So if you don't like the coach, then that means you don't like them. It's honestly so genius. I mean, if the guy fails, we're all still going to point at Strickland, obviously. And if Sumrall does fail, I hope he succeeds. But he should be on the chopping block, no doubt, if Sumrall does fail. But I thought it was interesting. You're like, man, he's circling the wagons on this one, and he's trying to, it's almost like those polar bears, they slide across the ice on their bellies. Because if they take a step, it'll be too heavy, right? Go right through the ice. That's what he's doing. He's spreading himself out, saying, oh, I got Spurrier, Urban Meyer, Danny Warfel. They all like this guy too. It's okay. So we'll see. I don't know. I think he's done a lot of good stuff in the portal so far. I think the team was talented last year. I think, Billy, for all of his flaws in play calling, I think he recruited well and developed okay, to where the team was in a decent position to compete. So I don't know. Hopefully, Sumrall kept a lot of the big pieces. So hopefully he's able to have an impact in year one. But yeah, we'll see. Only time will tell. I'm optimistic. It may not sound like I'm optimistic. I am optimistic. I honestly, I think he's going to do well.
Optimistic.
I think he's going to do well. I really do. However, if he fails, you know, you have my thoughts on what should happen if he fails.
Well, I love that the question was, what are your thoughts on John Sumrall? And 75% of your answer was, you want Scott Strickland gone.
I did not say I want him gone.
I did not say that. Maybe it's a proximity bias, because I like Scott personally and professionally, but even more than that, there's a lot of excitement here in Gainesville. And so maybe when you move out and you're looking in, I think maybe it's less exciting. I'm not sure because I'm not in that position, but I respect your views and I asked for them for a reason. But I can tell you here on the ground in Gainesville, Florida, people are excited. They love what they're seeing. They love the energy. And he seems like a gritty and tough guy that's going to hopefully win some games, you know? But I think this is true of Florida. I know this is true of Florida. Their fan base is an abomination. Not in the support, but how quickly they turn against. And I think that's sad. And I guess it can be, how would you say, informed by experience, you know? 2009 was the last time they went to a national championship, so you know that the program is able to get there, but they haven't been able to get there. I think a lot of it's like that for Texas, for me, is they're on the brink of greatness. They are a good team, except they are not a good team. They can't finish. They haven't been able to finish. And they haven't been relevant except 2005, 2009. And so I think we're both looking forward to some exciting seasons. The introduction of NIL has produced excitement and level competition. There are some issues, right? But it's not the end of the world. I love what Deion Sanders does is he punishes his students for missing practice or missing class. They get fined $1. So you miss a practice, I'm fining you $1,000. Get paid like professionals, get treated like professionals.
Yeah, but also, you know, you got kids that get upset and they come back and, you know, get after him with a machete, end up cutting a couple of his toes off. You know, I heard that happened. So
it did happen. It was a cover up. Like I think they said he had diabetes or something, and they had to cut his feet off. But no, that's just not true.
It's not. It was a disgruntled player / employee. However, I got to backstep a little bit. I can't let you get away with this slander against the Gator Nation. I think I think Feinbaum has the same sort of horrendous take as you about the nature of the Gator Nation. It's, to me, you go through and you look at the media and a coach goes 4-8 and it's his fourth year. And you say, hey, we should fire this guy. He's not very good. Like I said, I gave him credit. I think he built the roster with a lot of talent, but unfortunately his hubris wouldn't allow him to give up play calling duties. And so we say, look, we should fire this guy. And then, you know, Feinbaum and others, I'm not going to throw you in this group because it's a heinous group, although you did say that we were an abomination, but it's a little ridiculous to say, Florida, you should, you know, leave a coach for 10 years. And if he wins 8 games a year, you should just be happy about that. You know what I mean? You're not a powerhouse like Alabama or LSU. You know, Alabama, if they had lost to Auburn, they would have fired the guy on the spot and no one would have batted an eye. Oh, that's just Alabama. They demand excellence, but we're not allowed to demand excellence. That's the thing. Which I think, like you said, is ridiculous because we're the premier university in the state. the most talent-rich state in the U.S. Plenty of NIL dollars. There's no reason why we shouldn't be winning lots of games and lots of championships. But, I think I share that sentiment with a lot of folks that would consider themselves Gator fans. But just the thought that we should just sit back and just take 7 to 9 wins a year like we're, I don't know, Ole Miss. I mean, they made it to the playoffs. They're over the moon, right? But they're Ole Miss. I mean, they're a lower tier program. It's not even comparable. So that's just my opinion. Obviously.
I appreciate that feedback. If you let me respond a couple of ways,
please.
I think there's a difference between demanding excellence and treating people like they're garbage, right? I think demanding excellence is appropriate. We have the resources, but if you're talking bad about Billy, just constant, that's your whole personality. Or if you're booing a grown man off a field, I think that's a little silly, maybe a little childish, and I know for sure sinful. And so there's some reality checks. And speaking of reality checks, I think Florida has thought they are A tier or S tier program for a while, and so their expectations are a little higher than reality. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm saying proven history over the past 15 years. I think lowering the expectations can help with, and not lowering in a bad way, but maybe just managing. It can help with support of the team. Mando Bando, put it this way, and I agree with him. Billy Napier is one of the best off-season and during the season coaches in the nation. He is, this is Mando Bando's word, he is the worst game day coach in the nation. I think that might be a little extreme, but I think that's where he struggled, was the game day. And I celebrate he moved to James Madison. He's one of the great men in the world, I believe. And he hired an offensive coordinator immediately. So maybe he's learned. Maybe he'll make a comeback. Everybody had Lane Kiffin, for instance. He gets the hot shot job at Tennessee now. I'm not a huge follower of Lane Kiffin, but I know he was the head coach, I believe, at Tennessee and the head coach at USC, which are pretty large programs. And then he turned into the head coach of FAU. And then he started his comeback journey. Maybe this is Billy's track with a little less of the drama. Anyway, I think those are valid thoughts. They're valuable to hear. And I think our listeners are going to really appreciate this topic of conversation we're on.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say enough about Billy as a person. Everything I've seen from him has been absolute class act. I disagreed with booing him on the field, but you got to think Gator Nation's, 1 million strong? Probably not 1 million strong, but, and then you've got 1,000, 2,000 people in the stands that booed him after that game. It's like, I don't think that's fair representation. Like, if you're getting beat down and you're just staying around so you can boo the coach, that takes a low type of person to do that. I don't think it's representative of the whole. And I just can't get on board with lowering the expectations. There's just absolutely no reason to. However, it sounds like something that Strickland would say. I'm sorry. It does. I don't think there's any reason why we should lower expectations, but you all know my thoughts on it. I think Billy's a great guy. I hope he succeeds at James Madison. Sounds like he learned from his past stop, right, by getting the OC. So I hope he's very successful. I do. I would love that for him because I think he's a great dude. I just don't think he's the guy for us. And you look at Dan Mullen, horrible, recruited terribly, had a couple good portal picks, phenomenal game day and in-game coach like that. That's what saved him for as long as he was. But everything outside of actual game day was pretty pitiful. So unfortunately, you got to have one of the best in both of those worlds. You can't just have one or the other. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Well, tell me, what have you been learning about life lately? Anything sticking out to you that's memorable that you think our listeners would benefit from?
Learning about life, I think patience is one thing that I really am not great at. However, having two children, really, I was going to say you don't have a choice. You do have a choice. I mean, I guess if you just fly off the handle all the time, which I want to sometimes, obviously, but I feel like it gives you a real perspective, because children are very persistent, but can also be very, maybe not ignorant, but sometimes they want to do what they want to do, even if you tell them not to. So I don't know. I think it's just being patient with them, realizing that, hey, why is this child acting like a 2-year-old? Why can I not reason with this 2-year-old? And then you stop and you listen to yourself and you say, well, it's because I'm dealing with the 2-year-old. So sometimes we just got to stop, look at our surroundings, and take a little reality check. How am I reacting to this situation? Should I be reacting in this way? And maybe sometimes I should just pause and take a breath.
That's powerful. Do you have a breathing room?
It's outside typically. Yep, I've got I'll typically go to the garage. There's a fridge there. It's got some beverages and things like that. So I'll take a little breather. I'm kidding, of course. I'm kidding. Goodness gracious, people, calm down. Kidding. No, I don't have any breathing routines. It's just a matter of perspective, more so. Perspective in the moment.
So perhaps a metaphorical breath. And I think that's pretty important, is to have perspective. And you could apply that to anywhere. One might apply it to sports. We play sports like they're a religion. I say collective. Maybe the South is a little more like this, is that if your day, this is just an opinion, but I think it's fueled by biblical curiosity. If your day is ruined by a sports team that you like not winning their game, I think that is a moment to have a perspective, breath, metaphorical, or literal. That is not a moment to go open your refrigerator and go get a beverage because you are downtrodden. I'm not saying don't be sad because you're the team you love, but I am saying if it is impacting your day to where you can't love your family or you're just inoperable, I think it might be time for a quiet reflection time. And that's just a word of advice. You might disagree, not Brett or Rodrigo specifically, though they're welcome to, but you, the listener, and that's okay. I celebrate that. And as we think about, as many of you know, I get to be on the Unity Party team, and a lot of what we're focusing on is how to create a nation and a world where life can flourish, and a lot of that is disagreement in a way that loves and reaches a collective answer. And that answer may be, we don't agree on this, but we do agree that we want to create a nation and a world where life can flourish. And I think Brett is on that same team. He hasn't applied for this year, but I think he will. We'll see what Talia has to do for that, but that's a little something coming up.
Yeah, I'm stoked about it. I don't know what I'll apply for this year, but right now I'm just kind of biding my time, see what options are out there, see if I can get perhaps a bigger NIL package from either the Green Party or the Liberation Party or something like that. But I think talking with Talia and the rest of the board, I think we'll probably come to some sort of agreement, that we can all get on board with.
Yeah, it's exciting. Do you have any interest in knowing what I'm learning about life, or probably not?
I mean, I wasn't planning on asking, but yeah, what are you learning in life?
I don't really have an answer for that. But whenever you said, by the way, that was a joke, I'm about to answer that question. But you talked about your children. You needed patience. Well, in Mark, this is what we're studying in Life Group, the book of Mark. We're in Mark chapter 10. In Mark chapter 10, Jesus is talking to the disciples. He's saying the disciples are stopping the children from coming to him, and that is not good. And here's why. Historically, contextually, children were seen as inconveniences. So the literal and metaphorical translation would be that Jesus is stepping in for the lowly, the ones that don't have a voice, the ones that can't stand up for themselves. In this instance, it's children. Secondly, when you're a child, you are a lot more, how would you say, trainable, and I guess a disciplable would be a theological term or a spiritual term. But I think when you're a child, you have to have some sort of guidance in your life. And so when you reach a roadblock, or what do I do? How do I eat food? That's a great question for a child. That is taught by a guardian, whether that be your father, mother, or some of us aren't lucky to have those. And so we have grandparents that watch us, or foster systems, foster parents. Either way, guardian. Someone teaches you how to eat food. And I think it's the simple things like that. We have to remind ourselves that we have to be taught how to eat spiritual food. And I think that starts with asking, being humble. The root of not knowing things, to a certain extent, is pride. We could easily say, God, I don't know how to do X. I don't know how to share the gospel. I don't know how to teach the Bible. I don't even know how to pray. Funny enough, we just finished a study in Matthew on Sunday mornings. Seek first. Jesus literally says, pray like this: Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive those, our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. And to be frank with you, I think I might have mixed up prayers just then, but I could be wrong. I really don't know. They ran together in my head. Either way, the disciples asking Jesus, how do we pray? What a question that is for the seasoned believer, and it's one that we shouldn't stop asking. God, how do I pray? Humility, my friends. Secondly, I was at a mini conference, men's night, with Patrick Young. And I had seen this terminology that he shared. Patrick Young is a former, speaking of Florida greats, Florida Gator basketball player, known for his impeccable, maybe rebounding and defense. Thoughts on Patrick? Is that true? Is that a true synopsis?
Oh yeah, just a devastating figure in the paint. We used to call him Young the Giant, and that's that's me and my dad and my brother. But he was so large, and his arms. I mean, for being a big guy like that, you look at Condon, you look at Oliver Rue. These guys don't have any muscle mass. Patrick Young was jacked, and he was, just tall, just a huge person. So he was an unstoppable rebel force, is what I'll say.
Yeah. And just so the listeners know, he still is jacked. And so a big part of his story is he was in a car accident, or I reckon, car accident, and now he's paralyzed. And he saw that as an opportunity that God is working in his life. It happened for a reason. It's not like he made accidents. It's not like God said, oh, I wasn't expecting Patrick Young to get in a car wreck today. No, he knows. And so he's using that for purpose and direction in his life. He brought an encouraging word. But one of the things he pointed out, we hear a lot. The pride cometh before the fall is what we hear. Pride cometh before the fall. Well, that's not actually true. It's actually, biblically, pride comes before destruction. And the analogy is you fall all the time. Kids fall. You learn to walk, you fall down. There's a lot of difference between tripping and falling than destruction. And I think we don't take pride in our lives very seriously, a lot of times because we don't know where it comes from. We can't actually flesh it out because we're not, how would you say? Maybe we're just not asking, where am I prideful in my life? We're too prideful to ask that pride question. And so, how can I remove pride from my life? Because pride destroys. I think you see that in your family. You see that in your finances. You see that in the church. You see that pretty much everywhere. Whenever we start caring more about us than glorifying God, I think we run into issues. That's what I'm learning in life, being reinforced to me in life. It's been encouraging. And I think it's been challenging at the same time. I celebrate it. We've got a great life group going. Mark 10 is fantastic, and I would suggest to our listeners, give it a read.
That's phenomenal. I think you got the Lord's Prayer correct. I'll have to ask some of our Catholic friends how well you did. You know, they're really big into that one. Not that we should exclude it or that we have nothing to learn from it. But I know the Catholics are they've got that one memorized for sure. So if we have any papal friends out there, you know, maybe shoot us a comment and rate 1 to 10 how well you think Bo did. That would be really, really appreciated.
Yeah, and Maurice Thomas, if you're listening, and Maurice Thomas, for those of you who don't know, he was my 9th grade basketball coach. We would gather before the game every single time, and we would pray the Lord's Prayer, and it was, how would I say, it was a bit of tradition-like. I don't know if we all meant it. I think we were just saying it, to be honest. And that's the point of the Quite Frankly podcast. We're not here to lie to you. I think that's just the truth, is you get in those rhythms and it's just like, all right, let's do it. And it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just words. So don't pray it if you're not ready to live it.
That's an excellent word. We used to do the same thing for baseball. It was like so fast. We would knock that thing out in about 12 seconds. I was like, yo, we are getting quicker and quicker every single game. By the end of the year, it was like 6-7 seconds. Our father, you know. So, okay. All right. Yeah, that's where we cut this off. So,
for our listeners, it was a 6-7 reference and a 6-7 emote happened.
You're not allowed, dude. You are not young enough.
Okay, but spend time coaching 2nd and 3rd graders in basketball for 3 hours a week. You'll turn young enough, I promise.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think most trends, once they get below the high school age group of people that are doing the trend, it's time for the rest of us to move on. Let them have their fun with it, you know. But yeah.
And I'll say that here at the Quite Frankly podcast, we don't like trends. And And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, we want to be ahead of trends. And so we're spending time week in and week out. And really, it's Rodrigo, to be frank with you. He's searching new trends 2027 already. And so he's kind of forecasting how you would in stock projections. He's forecasting memories and things to say. And so quite frankly, if you don't know, was a 2029 forecasted trend. So we're getting ahead of the game just by a few years. And he's kind of developing a business plan for us. We are the business plan executors. And then we have the chair, as Brett previously mentioned. And that team is keeping us to account. And so I want to give some insider info into what to expect. It's not against the federal trade regulations or whatever you want to call it. But I think it is helpful for you to know is you may think that this is so off-brand and you don't know what we're doing, but I promise you 2029 rolls around, it's going to be out of this world. And so there's something to look forward to in your life.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to project these trends, these memes, because a lot of them are based on current events and things like that. But that's why we pay Rodrigo a lot of money. Obviously, if none of these come to fruition, I'm going to have a word with the board, not the chair, the board. Can you imagine a lot of people sitting in one chair? That's what Bo is trying to say to all of us. The chair is the head of the board. But you obviously haven't been around corporate America long enough to understand this, but it's okay. It's okay.
I'm just so used to the chair versus the others, the outsiders of the chair. That's just what automatically comes out of my mouth.
Right. If you're on a board, you're going to be the chair.
1,000%.
Chairman of the board, as they say. Huh. Okay. Fair enough. Well, obviously me and Rodrigo are still beefing a little bit, as they say. I'm not hoping that these trends don't come to fruition, but if they don't, like I said, we're going to have a couple words and either discuss employment or salary cuts altogether. So we'll see. I'm sure he's going to give me a horrible edit and probably AI some bags under my eyes or something like that, but it'll be all right. I'll withstand it.
It will be. And as always, I mean, we have, quite frankly, merch out. And so it's something to rep the brand with. But we are not stressing. I want you, the listener, to hear that, because we are expecting 2029 to be a large year. But if you want to be ahead of the trend, ahead of the curve, as people say, that is one way to do so today. And so don't delay your purchase.
Yeah, certainly don't. I mean, go, like Bo said, go to the website, purchase something now. By 2029, I'm hoping to have, maybe baby 5 or 6, at least on the way. So, if we could go ahead and get a little bit of the cash flow up front, that would be preferable. But like Bo said, no pressure. I do need to feed my kids, but that's the world that we live in. I chose to be a podcaster, okay? I chose to do this and, put out an hour worth of content every week, starting this week. So,
yeah, I think here's a great question, and we can kind of wrap up our time together, is for the year of 2026, do you have any commitments that you've committed to that you want to share with our listeners? Or think maybe on the opposite, what are some things you're cutting out of your life or need to cut out of your life in 2026?
It's funny because this year, especially at the end of the year, kind of going into the new year, was really busy for work. And so I honestly didn't even get into the whole New Year's resolution thing. I was like, I don't have time to think about these things. I mean, I'm sure that's an exaggeration, but I'm like, yo, I just got to put my head down and grind, So I haven't even really considered, what should I do more of or do less of. I should probably sit down and consider those types of things. But yeah, I really haven't given any thought or stock to my life at all in the last several months.
Yeah, I think that's valuable information. I think if you're a listener in Brett's life and you know him personally, you should reach out. And I want to be careful to our listeners and just kind of let you in on two things. One is there's New Year's resolutions and goals are not my thing personally. I think we tend to compromise, and when I say we, I speak of me. I know myself. I'll compromise what I believe in to reach the destination. Frankly, life is not about the destination. Life is about the journey, and that may be a cliche term, but I think it's true. For me, I've loved the word commitment. Here's what I'm committing to. Because there's nothing resolve. What happens when it doesn't get resolved? Goals, what happens when you don't reach your goal? Well, you kind of get disappointed in yourself. You kind of talk bad about yourself. And then you kind of give up on your desires. Commitments is, and I was talking to my friend Kelly about this, commitment is lifestyle. It's who you are. I'm committed to X. And so I've committed, this is my one commitment for the year. Encourage one person per week through text or phone call. That's 52 people a year. I think my ideal situation, encourage more people than that. But at the bare minimum, that's my commitment. Encourage one person per week. And I think that numerical commitment will turn into a character commitment. And what I mean by this is the output is 52, but the transformation is I will be an encourager in 2026. That's my commitment to you, the people of the Quite Frankly podcast. That's my commitment to Brett, the co-host of the Quite Frankly podcast. And we haven't done this in a while because, frankly, I don't think you care about my music taste, but I care about Brett's music taste. And so I would love to hear what your song of the week is.
That's a tough one. That's really a tough one. I listened to one today. I put together this playlist because I've been having some fires in my backyard with my buddies because it's so cold. And so obviously it's a lot of really, it's all country music. Let's get real. It's all country music. And a lot of it is slower and a little sad. But whenever you make it to the end of a playlist in Spotify, it just starts playing songs by the artists that are in that playlist. So one popped up the other day by Coulter Wall that I hadn't heard in a long time. It was called Happy Reunion. And so it was obviously a little different feel than the majority of his songs. But it's just about, a cowboy just doing his stuff throughout the day, He finds a cow, she's got a sticker in her eye. So he goes and helps the cow. He's got his dog by his side. So it's a happy song. It's just a guy. He's not worried about anything except taking care of the ones that he loves around him. You know what I mean? So that's what I'll go with. I'll go with Happy Reunion by Coulter Wall. How about you?
That's beautiful. I'm not familiar with that song, but I'll give it a listen here soon. My song of the week, the thing that has kind of been speaking to me and just the vibes in general, it's called A Couple Minutes by Olivia Dean. And I first heard this song in The Grand Wagoneer, that I previously mentioned on a different podcast, or the same podcast, different episode, where Jackson was controlling the ox. And then it got me into Olivia Dean. And I'll tell you what, listeners, I wasn't familiar with her game, but she has a little motion to her. And what I mean by this is her music is excellent. I very much enjoy it. It's chill. It's vibey. I'm not too certain what all the words say, but I do know the sound of it is fantastic. And so that she could be talking about heifers like Colton Wall is, or she could be talking about the man she needs. Whatever it is, I celebrate it. Most of it. Don't hold me to that commitment or phrase, but you will hold me to this. This is the Quite Frankly podcast. We love you deeply and generously. And I bet your bubble that we are going to see you in 7 days.